I sabotaged my father's marriage because he cheated on my mother. 8 stories of r/confession. I punched a girl in the face for kicking me in the balls. I was 16, at school, hanging out with my friends, and a couple of people that were not so much my friends. A couple of girls had a habit of kicking guys in the balls over BS, smallest disagreements, mutual insult throwing, or even for fun. I had warned them before, that I would someday do something they ain't gonna like, if they kept it up. Of course they had to put that to the test. Gotta see just how much you can abuse people, before you give it up. So we were standing in a circle, apparently I said something she disagreed with. Wasn't even an insult or anything. She feints to kick me in the balls. I tell her again, if she does that, something's gonna happen. She apparently takes it as a challenge, gives me the hardest kick in the balls I ever received. I collapse, feel like dying, puking, crapping my pants, can't breathe, absolute agony. Some of my friends are concerned, scold her, some buttholes, including her, are laughing their butts off, while I'm trying not to break into tears. I stand up 5 minutes later, feeling worthless, she's still laughing. I get the greatest rush of anger and emotional pain pent up over 2 years of those a-holes kicking me and other guys, including some of my friends, in the balls like we're less than dogs, and before I can think, my fist catapults itself into her ugly, laughing face. She collapses with blood streaming from her nose, wailing like a baby, as if she didn't like being put in so much pain that she collapses. Weird. Her like-minded friends look like they've seen a ghost, start screaming insults at me in sheer disbelief, and even though I was suspended for 2 weeks, and she got no punishment whatsoever, this was the most satisfying, liberating thing I've ever done, and I regret nothing. Got a reputation as a woman beater among some classmates, as if I randomly attack gentle, harmless girls, who actually deserve being protected, for the fun of it, but my friends stayed by my side, and no more balls were kicked after that. Would do again, don't give a crap that she doesn't have balls. I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend, he got me pregnant and I had an abortion. They got back together and got married. This was back in, let me think, maybe 1997? I was 38 and my daughter was 18, and she was dating Harry, who was 24. I was an alcoholic and dabbled in other drugs, mostly cocaine. I was not a good person, let alone mother. Not like I was abusive to my daughter or anything, but I was generally inattentive and cared more about my alcohol and drugs than her, especially in her teen years. I am 14 years sober now. I disapproved of my daughter dating Harry, but I never told her why. He would flirt with me, constantly, and the age difference also creeped me out. Also, he was an alcoholic and drug user, just like me. She broke up with him over his alcoholism. Soon after she moved away, not too far, but regardless she didn't live with me anymore. Harry kept calling me and asking if we wanted to get drinks. I turned him down, but then one day he said he had a bunch of coke and I couldn't resist. He came over, we did the coke, and we ended up having sex. He was a very good-looking guy. He looked a lot like that ridiculous 80s Justin Bieber picture that was on the front page today. That is actually what made me think about him. For the next few months, maybe like 3 to 4 months, he would sometimes come over and we would have sex and do drugs and get drunk together. Any drug addict knows what that is like to have a drug addict buddy in that way. Then I got pregnant. I knew it was by him. I had sex without a condom a few times stupidly. I never told him I was pregnant, and I went and got the abortion and kept it a secret. Anyways, I stopped seeing him after that, it was too weird. I also got sober, for like 4 months, before relapsing. Fast forward 2 years and my daughter contacts me and tells me that she got back with Harry, and that he is fully sober. I was mortified honestly. He was gonna tell her that we slept together, and she is going to hate me for life. They came over one day and said hi, and when my daughter was gone, Harry told me that there is no reason to tell her about what happened. I agreed. It's been 16 years of marriage on their part. They have a kid together. Harry got cancer, then beat it. I got sober. That's basically it. I don't see them very often. They live in Texas and I live on the East Coast. But whenever I go there is always that tension between me and Harry. It's literally the first thing that comes to either of our minds, I can just tell. Not like sexual tension, like why did we have to do that? What the hell is wrong with us? Kind of tension. I think about this often. Especially when I see my grandson. I always think that could have been my son if things had gone differently, but wow, what a disaster that would have been if I decided to keep that child. I killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. I haven't talked about this to anyone, even though it's been years, even my closest of friends, minus the ones that were there. One night when I was in college, I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road, there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him, he had already hit the hood of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him, his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving and they were all screaming and crying. He was laying on the side of the road with blood coming out his nose and mouth. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was alright and calling 911. All I could say was I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had set in what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while 2 paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it, and what still kills me today, was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done, it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to kill myself with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I am not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually I got my life back in order. Joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally start to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends, and actually going out. So maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I got a girl deported because we got into an argument. Years ago I was browsing Facebook one day and I saw a girl I went to high school with arguing with some other people. I was browsing through the comments and noticed they were all using some really incorrect terms and had some really bad misconceptions about the topic. I wanted to hop in there really quickly and just clarify the terms they were using and show them what terms they should be using so we could have an informed debate. She got so mad at me and told me that I was trying to discredit her and make her look stupid. She made a Facebook status about me in a long rant and was making some pretty hurtful claims. She then blocked me so that I couldn't respond to the claims. I made a fake account and added her as a friend again and found an old status that she made about how her parents illegally brought her over the border as a child. I submitted the photo of her status to a few government agencies and then finished out the school year and forgot about it. She never came back from summer break and some of her close friends mentioned that she had been deported with her family. I regret doing that because she couldn't speak Spanish because her parents wanted her to live here and truly be an English-speaking American, and now she is in a country that she doesn't know and she can speak the language well or at all. I make copies of other people's keys for personal use. Whenever anyone lets me borrow a key, usually to their house in order to pet sit, the first thing I do is go to Walmart and make a copy of that key for personal use after they ask for it back. I never break into houses and steal anything, other than food or maybe alcohol, but I love the feeling of being able to effortlessly enter a place I know I don't belong without anyone's knowledge. I have keys to multiple people's houses and a couple of buildings/garages from my old job. I lie about having my university degree and it got me a great job. I went to an Ivy League university in Ontario, Canada right after high school. My marks weren't great but they were good enough to squeeze me in. I spent most of my time in university partying rather than studying but still managed to pass all of my first-year classes. In my second year I skipped a lot of classes and was very lazy with the coursework. My marks were terrible and I failed a couple of my courses. In my third year, about halfway through, I dropped out and got a job landscaping. I did that for a year when I realized it really sucked and I began to regret not trying harder while I was in school. I figured I would apply to jobs that would normally require the degree that I would have gotten. I had spent the few years in school. I was easy enough to make the timeline on my resume make sense, and although I dropped out I had a decent knowledge of the area. The field I was attempting to enter is difficult start out and it took a few months of sending applications to get an interview. The company I got an interview with, my now current employer, is an internationally recognized name in the energy sector. I was extremely surprised to get my interview. One of the documentation requirements was university transcripts, and with an hour or two in Photoshop I had my proof of graduation. I sent in the papers with the other required information and never heard anything back describing any problems with my records. I ended up going through 3 interviews in the process and received a position. I have now been working with this company for almost 5 years. They provided all the necessary job training and nobody has ever questioned my education. I entered with a starting salary of $72,500 CDN, and received annual raises. Upon hiring me, I was told that the management staff was quite impressed with me through the hiring process and that they usually only hire applicants with minimum requirement of a master's degree. I basically pooped my pants every day while in the interview and training process, but now I don't really think about it ever. I didn't tell my university friends I faked having my degree. The only people that know I did this are my parents. I sabotaged my father's marriage because he cheated on my mother. When I was 4 years old, my father and mother divorced because he cheated on her. They had a really rough divorce and had lots of fights. Eventually the divorce was settled and my mother and father could move on. My father married his mistress, who I'll call Emily as to respect her privacy. My father was really happy with her, and me and my sister got a stepbrother and 2 stepsisters with whom we got along really well. Skip forward 2 years and Emily started acting different, and so was my father. Me and my sister often couldn't visit our father because he had to work, whilst in reality he was free. When me and my sister were there, we often weren't allowed to eat at the table, which 7-year-old me didn't understand. Eventually my father started becoming more distant. He didn't wish me happy birthday anymore and missed a lot of important milestones in my childhood, like learning to ride my bike or plays at school. When I was 9, my sister and I could only visit 4 days a month and had to sleep in separate rooms. I vividly remember that during one weekend that we were there I had accidentally broken a glass and Emily had turned furious. She sent me upstairs and had me take my socks, of which 9-year-old me found really weird. Then she showed me a piece of glass she held in her hand and said that this is what I deserved for my clumsiness. She pushed the shard of glass into the sole of my foot. I yelled and cried and tried to remove my leg from her grasp when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my father's hand. He was helping Emily do this. I don't remember what happened after that. Emily also got into a huge fight with my sister and had pulled her by her hair down to the basement. After these 2 occasions and a lot of verbal abuse, we decided to break all contact and tell our mother what had happened. We hadn't told her before because, well, he was our father. My mother knew this was serious abuse, but she was too afraid to alert the police since my father had threatened her with violence before. Skip forward another 5 years, I was 14 and a freshman at the same school my former step-siblings attended. Once I saw them, all the memories started rising again. My 2 stepsisters had become huge bullies and lots of people hated them. Me and a couple of friends decided to retaliate and secretly put small bags of marijuana in their backpacks. Apparently this had caused a huge fight in their home and my father and Emily decided to divorce. After this, Emily got into serious financial troubles and my father became an alcoholic. 2 weeks ago he was arrested for assault. Emily has allegedly become a prostitute and my former step-siblings have been brought into protective custody. This has all been my fault. It was my idea to put the marijuana in their bags, even though they hadn't done anything to me. I ruined the lives of my step-siblings and sent my stepmother and father into a downward spiral. Yet in some sick way I don't feel any remorse. My sister has been dealing with a severe eating disorder after all the verbal abuse from Emily and has been hospitalized twice. I've tried once to commit suicide because of my sexual orientation since I thought I was an abomination after Emily's conservative Christian rants. Now me and my sister are doing better, though we still have traumas. We've thought about starting a lawsuit, but because of our ages during the incidents, legal advisors have advised us to just move on. Anyway, I'm in a real moral dilemma. I did something that caused horrible things, yet I don't feel any remorse. Am I a psychopath? I mercilessly bullied 5 people in high school. 3/5 of them killed themselves. I am in my 40s now, and I don't deserve the life I have. I stepped on the backs of my classmates to make myself feel better about myself. I was bullied harshly in school, and had the crap beat out of me on a daily basis until I hit puberty. Then I suddenly grew into a monster. I towered over everybody at school. I also channeled my anger into working out, and became even bigger. I was a huge ogre of a person. I hated everybody. I had so much angst built up from my own bullying. My former bullies, being the manipulative cowards that they were, I see this in retrospect, but didn't see it at the time, befriended me. And we pretty much held a reign of terror over the school. I fed on the newfound respect from my former enemies. We preyed on the weak. There were about 5 nerds that I personally tormented harshly. I joined Facebook a couple months ago to see what became of them. I had hopes that they were able to live happy lives despite my awful treatment of them. One I knew died suspiciously in high school, but it turns out it was a suicide that was covered up. 2 more killed themselves right after high school graduation. The 4th lives alone in a trailer and appears to be crazy. The 5th person actually turned their life around and married the head cheerleader several years after graduation. So at least there's that. I wish I could apologize to the remaining 2, but it would be so trite and meaningless. Plus, it would probably re-traumatize them, having to see me again. Or having to think about those events again. I suck, I'm sorry, and sometimes I feel like I should off myself too. You know, to balance the scales of life. I have been tormented my entire adult life for being the bully that I was, when I really should have been an advocate for the bullied instead. I mean, I already knew how it felt. Instead of sticking up for people and beating the bullies' butts, I, like a weakling, joined them. I can never forgive myself for that. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Find all confessions linked in the video description. If you are new to the channel and like these kind of videos, you might want to consider a subscription. Anyway, let us know which of the stories has shocked you most. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video.